What's up, YouTube, and welcome to a new episode of the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And before we get started, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell so that you're notified whenever we upload a new episode or video. On this week, we will be talking about Virginia recruiting. They just finished having a big official visitor weekend. So we run down the big notes from that. Plus, we have recruiting analyst Steve Wiltfong on the show to break down some of the big quarterback targets for the Cavaliers. So let's get started. Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7, back from a one-week hiatus, and I hope everyone is doing well. And what a few days for Virginia football, and not just recruiting. Last week, UVA had their big groundbreaking for the Football Operations Center. And if you're on YouTube, you're seeing video of the groundbreaking. You're seeing Tony Elliott, Carla Williams, and Jim Ryan shoveling up some dirt. That's great news for the Cavaliers. And I can't stress enough. And we're going to talk about Virginia recruiting here in just a minute. And this is going to have an impact on UVA recruiting. I know a lot of people are skeptical. It's like, oh, it's just a building, it's just facilities. You know, there's still other programs with facilities. But this is showing UVA recruits, this is showing recruits in the state of Virginia that the university is investing not only in the program, but in their respective careers, in their future. That is big. If you are a UVA football recruit, you're now seeing that UVA is moving forward and investing in them. That's a big key for a lot of these recruits. You know, they've been hearing about it, but never saw anything really come to fruition. So seeing Carla Williams staying on that podium, saying how big of a day this is, seeing the players, how excited they are, this is going to be a huge momentum swing for UVA because, honestly, a lot of other programs was using this against UVA in the first place on the recruiting trail. Well, now they can't use that because UVA is starting to break ground. A lot of these recruits that they're currently recruiting will be able to see this building because it is expected to be done in the 2024 spring. So this is a big deal for UVA. We can't stress that enough. This is a very big deal. So I think a lot of you probably won't believe me. Maybe not. Maybe you're skeptical about this. So how about we listen to a commitment? How we listen to a new UVA commit, defensive lineman Myles Greene. I spoke to him shortly after his commitment to Virginia after his official visit, and I asked him straight out, how big was this part of the decision?
It was huge. To see them get a new coach and let him implement a new facility already like that, it was a real big mark because that just means that he has a huge effect on the culture and what's going on at the school and what he really wants to implement for the team. Like, he already is in the motion of doing that. He's not taking no time. He's not waiting. He's going right now. He's trying to get this thing rolling now. So now I can see that he moving forward. He getting everything straight for me. And when I get down there, it's going to be on a roll. And I'm going to be a part of that process. And we're going to win us a national championship.
So as you can see, I'm not making this up. This is huge for UVA. And let's go on to moving on to the recruiting trail. Obviously, this was a big official visitor weekend for Virginia. They had a couple of OVs on grounds. Myles Greene was one of them. He ended up committing. Then you had cornerback Jarvis Lee. He ended up committing on Sunday. Well, actually publicly committing because he committed on Saturday night. They also hosted Samaj Turner, another D-line target. Jalen Smith, a linebacker target, and Deshaun Stone, another DB from North Carolina. As I wrote on Wahoo's 24/7 around Sunday afternoon, there was a good buzz coming from the weekend. Obviously, we put in two crystal balls, and both of them committed to UVA. And having Lee and having Greene committing is huge. And I think everyone will agree having Greene committed is really big for the program. Grabbing a big target like Myles Greene from Highland Springs is a big deal. And we're going to see, if you're on YouTube right now, there's some practice clips of Myles Greene from his showcase over at Highland Springs that I was at early on in May. And Greene is such a good get, especially because he is in state. He chose UVA over other schools, including Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Duke. So these are the type of programs you're up against. We were talking about Duke and Virginia Tech as some of the programs you're going to be up against if you're Virginia. So it's a big win for them, getting him on grounds for the first place and then committing right after that visit. Now, the other thing is that's another in-state win. Don't forget, in the class currently, you not only have Miles Greene coming from in-state, you have Cole Serber, an offensive lineman target that committed to UVA. He was the first one in this class. Then you have running back Dante Hawthorne, who just transferred to Colonial Forge. So this is big for them. This is huge to having 3 in-state out of 4. Jarvis Lee is a Floridian, not an in-state target, but also a very underrated guy in the class. So things are looking better for Virginia on the recruiting trail. And from the guys that visited that didn't commit this weekend, things are looking good for at least Samaj Turner. I currently still have a crystal ball for him. We're recording this on Tuesday. Tuesday, June 7th. You always have to make sure you clearly mark what day you're running these shows so that people understand when this happened. So if they're listening later on, Samaj Turner loved his UVA visit. This is the first time his parents were visiting. That was a big thing for him because he wanted to make sure that his parents were feeling the same thing that he felt during his visit back in the spring where he visited with his uncle. So that is going to be key for them. And I think Turner is still trending towards UVA. That Duke visit is going to be big. Obviously, the in-state program is how much does he feel like he wants to move away to Virginia or wants to stay in state. So that's gonna be big. But again, huge weekend for Virginia, and I can't stress this enough. The Greene pickup was big, and Miles Greene was joking with me that he didn't want to let the cat out of the bag so much. He was thinking of committing on Friday. he felt like this was going to be the visit where he committed. He had a strong feeling. He had a great relationship with Coach Downing, and here's what he had to say when I asked him about why he picked Virginia.
Man, it was the environment, the team, the players, the coaches. They was all one unit. They was like one heartbeat. They all was following the code. They all knew what they was doing. They got a plan. Coach Elliott, he got a plan. They all on one timeline. It's going to be perfect. I knew it was perfect. I knew it was perfect once I got down there.
So obviously, Greene is completely on board. He said he's 100% committed. So it'll be interesting to see how much he has an impact in the state of Richmond. Obviously, you always want guys from the 804 staying close to home. So he's out there recruiting. If you were on my Twitter feed, you saw the recruiting pitch. There's a full interview with him on YouTube as well as on Wahoo's 24/7. So you can see exactly what his recruiting pitch sounds like. Moving forward now, we're going to get into a little bit of a break here. But after we return, we'll have Steve Wiltfong join the show. Quarterback. Who is going to be the quarterback in this class for Virginia? We get to the latest from the man who knows a lot about the signal callers. And one of those signal callers will be on grounds this week. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. Again, I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And just as we were talking about, it was a big recruiting weekend for Virginia last week. And guess what? We're going to do it all over again towards the end of this week. And let's talk about a big visitor, Brock Glenn, quarterback, coming in to Virginia on grounds to see Tony Elliott and Taylor Lamb. This will be his first visit to grounds. What are the chances that UVA can pick up a very, very talented signal caller? Well, first, let's bring in the man with the answers. Welcome in recruiting analyst Steve Wiltfong. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Well, Steve, before we actually get going and talking about some of these quarterback targets, I want your general opinion of how this Tony Elliott staff is doing on the recruiting trail. We talk about some of these visitors they've been having on grounds. Number one player in the country, Arch Manning, was on grounds. One of the best athletes in the country, Nicholas Harbor, was also on grounds. Obviously, the trend is they're not going to be a UVA, but those two on grounds, That's pretty notable. What is your opinion on how things are going?
Virginia is a place that you're going to kind of judge on the back end, right? Recruiting is about who you get, not who you don't get. And Coach Elliott was real instrumental in helping maintain a Clemson program that was obviously one of the best in the country. And Clemson did that by landing a blend of elite players, but also guys that they out evaluated other college staffs for. And I think so. With Virginia, it's going to be a lot of great evaluating and player development, and we'll see where that takes them. Obviously, you're going to take your swings at guys like Nicholas Harbor if they're going to pay attention to you. But again, for Virginia, it's going to be mining for talent, mining for upside. Culture is going to be so big. It certainly is at Clemson. So I imagine, that's going to carry over to Virginia. And I think that was the case under the previous regime at Virginia too. And so culture fit, scheme fit, upside, those are things that Coach Elliott and this new staff in Charlottesville is going to keen in on.
Well, let's get back to the quarterbacks. Let's focus on that right now. Brock Glenn, he is expected to visit grounds this week. That's what at the last update, Glenn told me that he was expected to be on grounds. Obviously, again, I need to look at my watch. It's June 7th. Obviously, that could change before now and the 12th, which is the expected date that he's meant to arrive. So keep staying on Wahoo's 24/7 to see if that changes. But as of right now, Brock Glenn is visiting UVA. He visited Auburn last weekend. What is your feeling around him right now?
Well, there's several schools that are in the mix for Brock Glenn. As you said, Auburn over the weekend visited for their spring game where he was offered. He took an official visit to TCU. Had a really nice time down there with the Horned Frogs. Florida State's in play for him. Going to camp at Ohio State. The Buckeyes are recruiting Brock Glenn. Mississippi State's been in there for a while, so there's several programs that Brock Glenn has showed strong interest in, and Virginia is one of them. And Virginia checks a lot of boxes. Coach Elliott and his pedigree at the quarterback position, the success he's had in the past is exciting. Being part of a program that's on the rise, a program that offers so much academically, and then really just Charlottesville itself is an awesome place. And so, Brock Glenn's interested in UVA, and we'll see how it stacks up after the visit happens that you reported.
Right now, he has a few crystal balls to Auburn. Do you agree with that, Steve? Or do you feel like that's where it's trending right now? Do you feel like they're the favorites?
I know that they've been involved for a while. I have not logged a pick yet for Brock Glenn. I think that Auburn has really excited him as well. Again, all these schools are doing a good job with Brock Glenn.
Well, Glenn's not the only quarterback target for Virginia. They're also recruiting Avery Johnson. A couple weeks ago, it looked better. Not going to lie, it did look better. Avery was considering Virginia for an official visit. He might still consider them right now, but it seems to have cooled off. He had told me in an interview early on in May that he was going to figure out which schools he was going to take an official visit. And Virginia was one of those schools he kind of lumped together. The staff had a Zoom call. Everyone was on there. They were recruiting him pretty hard. But over the course of the last 2-3 weeks, it seemed like things were cooling down, especially when he's starting to narrow things down. And it seems like Oregon and Kansas State and Washington seems like the teams that kind of trended forward with him. Does Virginia have a legit shot right now? Do you feel like Johnson is the trend just keeps cooling down?
He's obviously took the official to Washington this past weekend. Kansas State's done a terrific job recruiting him in state, and they have a chance to really land a lot of the state's best players alongside Avery, who would be, the bell cow for them. And then Oregon next weekend. Oregon's really turned it up for him. Excuse me, not next weekend, but in 2 weekends. So those trips are locked in. So I think it's easy to say that he has great interest in those 3 programs, but he told you that Virginia's in the mix as well. And again, I think that goes back to Tony Elliott and his pedigree at the position and what he's been able to do with some of the biggest names in the past under center.
Hey, before we let you go, we always knew 2023 was going to be an uphill battle for several recruits. When it comes down to it, recruiting is always about relationships. Where do you see this staff right now, do you feel like we can't really judge them right now for the 2023 class from the reasons what I just said? They're coming up from behind. Do you feel like the 2024 class is really where we get to really judge them and see what they can really accomplish moving forward at Virginia?
Well, you would think that they would, this new Virginia staff, when you're looking at the 2024 class, would have a great handle on who the under the radar guys are that they really like, right? Just guys that they've evaluated, guys that they've kept tabs on. They've now watched their sophomore and junior seasons. By then, they'll have a great feel for, top targets and guys in their backyard and guys that fit UVA and the culture that they're trying to have with this football program.
Well, thank you, Steve, so much for joining us and answering our few questions and breaking down the big quarterback targets for the Cavaliers. Again, we really appreciate your time. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for listening to our podcast. Actually, if you were watching on YouTube, you probably saw, come here, Mateo, you probably saw a sneaky 4-year-old in the podcast this week. He was home from school this week. You want to say hi? Hi. So he had Mateo kind of snuck in there from YouTube channel. And so let's move this microphone off your face. So he joined me a little bit. He was running around. So he's waving hi, everybody. But if you like what you're hearing on the podcast, don't forget to subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. And also leave us a review on Apple and on Spotify. So for Mateo, for Steve Wiltfong, I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. Have a great week, everybody.